Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I hope I'm going live about now. This is a stream that I honestly didn't know when I would actually be doing it because I always forget at what time of December Marquez launches his annual smartphone awards. This year it happened to be very, very close to the actual end of the year. It was like 2 or 3 days ago. So here I am now to react to it, belated as per usual. But the video has picked up around 3 million views. It's doing quite well. It has gathered a little bit of controversy as pretty much everything MKBHD related this year. Beyond that, yes, there is like the controversy of like Chinese brands versus iPhone or Samsung. There's also just a broader laziness accusation of like, did Marquez even really test like the Vivo X200 Pro properly or the Oppo Find X8 Pro? God, I hate some of these names so freaking much. Don't get me wrong, it's not like iPhone 16 Pro Max is the best name ever either, but at least there is a consistency there to the branding. There are like no 22 different sub brands of iPhone, Realme, Find X 16 Pro Ultra, or something like that that will get you confused or anything like that. Riveting Tail Chap joining the chat and screaming for the algorithm. And hi, Mark. By the way, guys, I know Mark is often written with a K, but my channel name is literally Mark Tech with a C. How the actual F do you guys manage to misspell my name when it's literally there every single time you click on a freaking video for my channel? That being said, thank you so much for joining. To everyone else who is tuning in, please subscribe, like the video, share it out with anybody who you think might enjoy it, and comment. I love interacting with a lively live chat, getting your opinions, debating you a little, teasing you guys on some stuff. And you can support this channel through super chats and super stickers right while I'm live. You can become a channel member. Shout out to Angelica, Steve, and Max Maximus, who are all Mark Tech Pro Max supporters right here on YouTube. Or you can become a supporter over on Patreon. We have a few different tiers up and down across both YouTube and Patreon. However you want to support this channel, directly, indirectly, just watching these videos, it's all very much appreciated. There is a little bit of Apple news that obviously comes from the fact that it is Sunday today, so it's time for a new Power On newsletter by Mark Gurman. There's also a little bit of stuff by Digitimes. I would like to probably cover most of that stuff after the MKBHD reaction. For one, I think that we will be probably pretty quickly finished with the MKBHD video. It's not super short, it's a half an hour video, but I don't think I'll actually have to pause it too much. But at the risk of that, it might actually take us a little bit longer than I expected to. You can still go to 9to5Mac and Mac Rumors, read those reports from Mark Gurman. They're not that groundbreaking. There's nothing crazy here. Plus, I know around Christmas time, there are generally like fewer tech watchers, especially live viewers. So I just don't want to waste your time. But if we still have time after the MKBHD video, I would like to cover that as well. Without any further ado, let's get started. And as always, let me know if the audio and video quality is working all right for you. If I am not too loud or Marquez is too loud, who like it's sometimes hard to balance that. Every YouTube video is a little bit let's say to each their own when it comes to YouTube audio sometimes. So yeah, hopefully it all works well, and let's get started.
All right, welcome to the Smartphone Awards.
Okay. Marquez is an attractive dude. He's tall, he is well built, he has a nice face. This outfit doesn't slap. I'm sorry. Like, in theory, yes, if this was just like a sports jacket, like still like formal wear, right? I'm not the menswear guy from Twitter, but like a hoodie underneath, like this looks almost like a prom jacket. So yeah, sorry, that ain't the look. Also, in general, for African Americans, because you have that really, really great skin tone here, which works really well also with his environment, because his environment is generally very bright. He's darker, works really, really well if you wear white. Obviously, he's an attractive dude, doesn't need too many recommendations. He's also a millionaire, which obviously helps too. Just saying, this combination, it's a bit much. Should have been just a regular, sports jacket.
2024. Every year, dozens and dozens of smartphones come out, and this is one of the most highly anticipated videos of the year where we get to reward and highlight some of the absolute best of them and some of the worst. So we have 10 categories to go through tonight. Each one of them may have potentially some runner-ups or some honorable mentions, depending on if they deserve it, of course. But then every category will have its overall winner, and every overall winner will get a custom trophy that we've made, like usual. So if you are a tech company watching this and you win a trophy, reach out, let me know. I could send you the trophy. So
I wonder, like, I would love to know which companies actually like ask for those. Like, would Apple do it? I mean, it's probably not bad marketing, right? But it's then bad if like the next year you lose. It's also bad if you come and ask them like, could we get our trophy, right? And that's like gets like covered in the press. But then you get like the camera trophy, and Samsung gets like 3 trophies more, including like best big phone of the year and stuff like that. Yeah, so it's hard to say. By the way, I finally got the chance to go a little bit more hands-on with the Xiaomi devices. Unfortunately, the Xiaomi 15 series is still not available in my country, but I got some time to test out the Xiaomi 14 and 14T series. And I have to say that this curvature that you see on the back is actually extremely comfy. Like, I'm somebody, I really like the slight curvature to the metal here on the iPhone 16. 15, stuff like that. I hate when it's super duper sharp. This is why I always liked wearing my iPhone, like having a case on my iPhone 13 Pro Max. I never liked the rounded metal, but like then that super hard transition. Rosa, welcome to the chat as well. Hello. Always nice to see regular supporters. Like Samsung really never vibed too well with me here. I guess the regular models are okay, but they're also smaller, so it's harder to compare. But I have to say, for all the faults that I sometimes put on some of the Chinese brands, I will not fault the Xiaomi here, or in fact the Vivo, seeing that it has a pretty similar design approach to actually curving the glass on the back a little, making sure that it sits a little bit more comfy in the hand. And it makes it also a little bit thicker without necessarily like compromising too much, right? It's the kind of thickness that won't be uncomfortable because it literally is nicer to hold. Yeah, so just some compliments here where they're due. And yeah, still, like the iPhone 16 feels incredibly nice in the hand. It still has, in my opinion, the absolute best soft finish on the glass. I wasn't actually aware that it felt noticeably different. Like for the most time, I wasn't aware. Like just how different the 16 series on the back feels versus the 15 series. Maybe it's just to me, but whenever I look at my 15 Pro and I feel it, and then in the Apple Store I try the regular 16 or the 16 Pro, it just feels a lot smoother, a lot nicer on the 16 series. So compliment to Apple to however they've done it. Hopefully it doesn't actually like reduce durability, scratch resistance, or anything like that. So that's really nice to see. We're also gonna go a little bit faster through the video so we aren't here for a full 2 hours or anything, and let's continue.
There are a lot of phones on this desk in front of me from all different manufacturers, some of them flagships, some of them cheap, some of them big, some of them small, some of them easy to get, some of them hard to get, but they all have one.
There are a lot of Nothing devices on it, and I have to say that Nothing is ultimately like such a letdown for me. Like, I have to say, well, like, it's just they've done this skin originally, right? Like this very special like Nothing look, and since then they've tried to do this like transparency thing on their smartphones and their earbuds and stuff like that. And while they don't make bad products, they're certainly decent value. I have to say, versus everything else in the market, it's just not exciting having a company that like prides itself on like 5% better value than you usually get on the Western market and 15% worse value than you get on the Indian or Chinese market. I'm like, really? That's like your standout? And then there's like the bullshit, like their cheapest model here with like that gimmicky accessory connector, which obviously is like unfortunately limited to this one product, right? Which means like the cheapest nothing phone is like in some ways more versatile than the more expensive version, which is such a weird combination of features and pricing. Yeah, when I look at all the brands, I at least know that while I might not be the biggest fan of, for example, Oppo, right, for the things they do with ColorOS and how much they copy iOS, might not be the biggest fan of Xiaomi or Vivo, but I can acknowledge absolutely that they do a lot of stuff with cameras, and Xiaomi especially also targets really high build quality in comparison to many other cheaper quote unquote brands. But when I look at the brands that are like represented here, I can see an identity to almost all of them except for nothing, which feels like they're just doing random shit between each different model. At least that's how it feels to me.
One thing in common, which is they all came out during this calendar year of 2024. So let's give out some awards. So the first category, best big phone. So the idea behind this category was to sort of separate smaller phones and then the bigger phones and then reward the absolute best big phones. But the thing about phones these days,
they're all big.
Is they're all kind of big now. Yeah. Like phones are just getting bigger. So I'm gonna try to reward the absolute biggest ones and the ones that make the most use of having a little bit of extra space. So like, here's an example. The ROG Phone 9. This came out late in the calendar year, but because it's a gaming phone, they sort of target all the things that make it good at gaming, and they also happen to make it a great regular phone. Huge 6.8-inch screen, also huge speakers, also huge battery. It's great for regular phones. It even has a headphone jack, but it's not perfect, you know, nothing's perfect, but one got really, really close this year, and that's the Vivo X200 Pro. Again, a phone to come out late in the calendar year, but they basically did everything with this phone. You can see the huge camera bump. There's some incredible camera hardware in here, another huge screen, but one phone did outdo it. And there was one big phone that kind of nailed everything about being a big phone, and that's the winner, which is the Samsung Galaxy S24 Ultra. Samsung has got this formula down to a science. They have made a really good use of space in the Ultra series of phones for years now. Really nice screen, probably one of the best in any smartphone. Also with this...
Which, no, by the way, that's not even true. Like, there are phones that get noticeably brighter, for example. I mean, it's a good screen. I guess for some people, it's that anti-reflective coating, which, yes, it is what he's bringing up right now. But that's not the display, I guess.
Really good anti-reflective coating. That kind of went under the radar, but is really good on this phone. Really good cameras on the back without protruding too much. It also has a huge battery while still having a stylus down there. There's just a lot going on in this phone and all the software to back it up. Plus, it recently started getting this One UI 7 beta, which jumps it to Android 15. It's getting software updates. There's just a lot of good things going on with this phone. It's skewed with these awards sometimes to be the phones that came out later in the year. This came out in January. Still deserves the award. So then next category, best...
I guess the stylus here, I believe Samsung has gotten this award before, specifically because of stuff like the stylus. Like the iPhone notoriously doesn't get it because it like doesn't support, for example, multitasking with 2 apps or more on the screen or something like that. But I really don't know. Like, I guess maybe the stylus is good enough, but at this point, the Vivo delivers over the Samsung like better battery life, better performance with much better sustained performance, especially thanks to better cooling and the higher efficiency of the Snapdragon 8 Elite, and better cameras. For example, that telephoto camera on the Vivo X200 Pro, that one is about as big as Samsung's main camera sensor. So, yeah, it's really weird.
Small phone. This is kind of a sad one, actually, this year, because while, like you've seen, lots of phones have been getting bigger and bigger, the small phones usually would pull up the rear. There'd be a couple small phones that sort of float around and deliver that special experience for people who want a flagship, but that's not huge. The mini iPhones and the Zen phones of the world. But those are all dead now. So then what's left? What could be the best small phone among all the stuff that we saw come out this year? Here, think about this. The Samsung Galaxy S24 came out earlier this year, right? It's not that big of a phone. It's a 6.2-inch display. It's the smallest flagship that they made. 6.2-inch screen is bigger than the phone that won the best big phone 10 years ago, which was the 5.7-inch Galaxy Note 4.
God, how I hated that faux leather back. It's so not super good.
That just shows you how crazy it's gotten. You know, there's the Vivo X200 Mini also came out. That was still over 6 inches. Really good phone for that size.
Steve,
And I also
welcome
considered
to the chat. Watching
the
live for
flipping
once.
phones
Welcome
every
to
year
the chat,
that
bro.
they're appealing as
I
small
know
phones, but
it's
then you open
always
them up and they're
weird
huge
to
again.
try to
Ultimately,
meet
what I
each
settled
other,
on
but
was
always
the iPhone
grateful to have your
16.
support.
Best small phone of 2024. So the iPhone 16.
This is a bit of a controversial choice because, well, if you like the iPhone 16, may I introduce you to the iPhone 16 Pro, right? Which is almost identical inside. Yes, it will be a little bit more heavy, but it will give you more performance, A18 Pro versus A18. It will give you like faster USB-C. It gives you 120 hertz ProMotion screen. It gives you the 3 cameras on the back, including a 48 megapixel ultra wide and including a larger main camera sensor. Like, there's just a lot more for very, very little size difference on the iPhone 16 Pro. So honestly, don't quite know what MKBHD is getting at here.
16 is rocking a 6.1-inch display. Note that it's the same body size as the iPhone 16 Pro, but with a slightly smaller screen. But I really like the way that Apple stepped up the base phones this year. They have really good cameras, really good battery life.
Cameras are almost identical to last year's model. Like, the ultra-wide is noticeably better, yes, but I don't know. Like, I feel like people are really just liking the design of the dual camera, and I feel they are attributing a lot more to the 16 generation than it actually deserves. Like, sure, the regular iPhone 15 was actually a generation behind in terms of processing versus the iPhone 15 Pro, so it had the A16 chip. So technically, we are doing a dual jump from iPhone 15 with an A16 chip to the iPhone 16 with an A18 chip. We also get 8 gigs of RAM, and with it Apple Intelligence support. But beyond that, it's just a nicer device. And yes, as he already alluded to, the iPhone 16 Pro is basically the same size because it has slimmer bezels, still slightly larger, a little bit heavier because of mainly titanium versus aluminum. But yeah, if I were to reward a best small phone, it would definitely be the 16 Pro.
Flagship chip performance, years of software updates, more RAM than the base phones have ever had. And yeah, I could have given this to the 16 Pro because of how mad I am personally about the lack of high refresh rate, but everything else about the base iPhone feels as close to the flagship as it's ever been. And I even prefer things like the matte rails and the real variety of colors. They've just done a really good job with the iPhone 16. So in this world of so many phones being so gigantic and trying to pack as much as possible into a huge phone and being a two-handed phone, shout out to the couple of one-handed phones still left. So then, that brings us to our next category of the night. Best camera. So things are always interesting in the camera space for a couple of reasons. Number one, obviously, the hardware just keeps getting better and better year after year. Better periscope cameras, bigger sensors, all the optics improve. But also, this year especially, we've just seen a ton of AI stuff. Everyone is expected to have some AI, especially in their cameras, whether it's AI scene recognition, or AI portrait mode, or AI background object removal, whatever it is. There's gotta be AI in just about every camera. So in that way, I can definitely say that my criteria for best camera has moved around a bit, and this feels like one of the most competitive years ever for cameras. You know, the Pixel, we didn't do the blind camera test this year, but I suspect it would have done really well again. They still have that look to them. And the Galaxy S24 Ultra is just consistently so good at photos and videos for Android phones every year. But one really stood out to me this year. And again, it came out late during the calendar year. But the Vivo X200 Pro, man, if you haven't heard about this phone, this has got some serious camera hardware, and the reason it stood out to me is because it feels like it comes the closest to an actual real camera shooting experience and results out of anything on this table. So hardware-wise, it's already high-end. It's got a really big 50 megapixel main sensor. It also has a large 50 megapixel ultra-wide, And it has a 200 megapixel sensor behind that periscope zoom lens as well. The shots
that the problem when people call it periscope, which I'm not denying that it's like technically a periscope, but if your zoom is really below 4x, and I would argue below 5x, like you're really just a regular telephoto, yes, with a really good big sensor. But yeah, I always find it funny that's like, yeah, like 3.7x is like the actual like magnification there. So yeah, it's again, it's not trying to downplay it, but there's a reason. For example, when we watch Tech Tablets video, like the iPhone, now there are a couple of factors here, and I will not deny that the iPhone has an abysmally small telephoto sensor in comparison to these phones. But when they actually zoomed in really far, now there is obviously the help of that the iPhone zooms in more optically, 5x versus 3.7. But then also, thanks to great sensor shift image stabilization, the iPhone actually was able to gather a lot of light onto that small sensor, while usually because zooming in far, you get a little shaky and stuff like that. The sensor struggles to aggregate a lot of light, even if it's a relatively large sensor. The aperture is not too great when you use a high magnification system. So yeah, it's really like it's not, by the way, here to downplay the Vivo. I actually am really happy that there is this notably better competition. But whenever people are like, "Oh, it gives you like this experience of a real camera," yes, it has. All the problem is it really doesn't. When you actually look at real cameras, you will usually find that the best results from a real camera happen when you like use a very like desaturated, basically raw photo, and then edit it a little bit. This highly opinionated, super contrasty look, like a lot of over sharpening going on, but because the sensors aren't crap, that detail isn't at least fully fake. Like sometimes, like for example, Samsung's telephoto cameras, they do a lot of over sharpening that just isn't based on any data really. The sensors are just too small to gather that much. So while I'm not against entirely that Vivo look, and I think that as an option for consumers, it's not bad, but as the default look, I'm really not too big of a fan of it. It's just way too opinionated for me. Oh, and Max Maximus, sorry, Mr. Chat. Almost all our MarkTech Pro Max supporters are in the chat saying, Max Maximus, I assume you commented on Steve's chat saying, lol, me too, but at the gym, so cannot comment too much, have fun. Well, have fun and great success at the gym, going to the gym right after this. So this is why I partially didn't want to, don't want to make this a 2-hour video. But yeah, thank you guys so much for joining. I know during the holidays, it's really difficult to find time.
that come from it have this great natural depth of field as well. The camera app is quick and full of options, and the super high resolution on that telephoto lens means that it can go from the 3.7x optical way in and still maintain sharpness even without doing the S24 Ultra's dual telephoto thing. Plus,
but you can see, by the way, with that final result, by the way, that he took,
go from the 3.7x optical way in and still maintain sharpness even without doing the,
like, it's a sharp image, but you can see that it's like there's a ton of noise here. Like, yeah, there's depth of field going on and stuff like that, but it's not like whenever I go on Twitter, I see like people photographing insects with the Vivo X200 Pro, and they're like, oh my god, this level of detail. First of all, niche use case in general. Second, you're all capturing those photos in like incredibly good light. I see that because obviously you see the difference here with not so great lighting conditions. So this is like, I feel like a lot of the stuff that we see online is either hyper edited by default or it's hyper edited almost by the phone itself. So yeah, this is why I already know the result who wins best camera, and I'm actually absolutely fine with giving like the Vivo one of the runner-ups, especially for its very ambitious zoom camera. But I just have to say, like, whenever people are like, oh, look at this result, the iPhone could never, I'm like, bro, just chill the frick out and listen to actual experts who use like iPhones all the time. Plus, even if they slightly win in stills photography, then the iPhone wins by a lot in video photography. That would still give me a lot of reason to make the iPhone win. But just in general, I feel like the consistency on iPhone is better. Plus, I would argue that the selection of pro tools that are actually easily accessible on iPhone, I would argue stuff like the Halide app, now Kino from the same developers, but I would especially argue things like ProRes and ProRAW, which are not as finicky as like real raw photographs or like red magic raw videos or something like that, because the iPhone still has like hardware encoders and decoders for all that stuff. I would argue those things give you a lot of versatility for editing and stuff like that, that for example the Vivo wouldn't do. Like sure, you could still capture like regular raw photo, but that's a lot more work to put in afterwards, and it's way harder to get really good results if you are not an actual pro. Like I have learned to work pretty well with Pro Raw. Regular Raw is still basically a nightmare to me because there's just so much to do.
S24 Ultra's dual telephoto thing. Plus, I had a lot of fun playing with the portrait lens looks built in, which can shape and stylize the bokeh in a way that's really convincing, even if the subject cutouts aren't perfect. But it didn't win my award this year. Look, I'm just as tired of it as you guys are, but if you had to take just one smartphone from this table from this year to take all of your photos and videos, the choice is still the iPhone 16 Pro. The streak continues, and yeah, I hate them winning every year just as much as the next person. But look, ask anyone who shoots and relies on videos and photos from their smartphone regularly what they would use, and the answer just keeps coming back, iPhone 16 Pro. Obviously, it's easy to shoot with, it's simple, and it's reliable. Over and over again, it produces that similar look. And they added a lot of specific features this year to dialing in that look. So you have all these new manual controls, you have all these formats that you can shoot in, and the video is consistently unparalleled, from the 4K 30 and the autofocus to the super stabilized video to the super slow-mo video. I honestly
To now
want
4K 120 to, oh, okay, thank God, that is just the clock on the Porsche cars. I thought he was going to show us how fast he's driving. No, Marquez, please no. Steve asking in the chat, do you think, I assume iPhone 16 Pro, I don't actually think we have 16 Pro models this year. Next year, we would be getting the 16 Pros from Xiaomi, I guess. We are due then a 15T series, and then the Snapdragon 8 Elite 2 would then be, the devices would then be the 16 Pros. Do I think the iPhone 16 Pro deserves it? I kind of already alluded to it that yes, even though in some measures it obviously can fall behind. Ironically, the one thing where I found the iPhone actually lags behind, not in hardware, but actually in however they treat it in software, is with the ultra-wide camera. I feel like that Apple's tendency to go for a relatively soft look, it works really well for the main camera, which is high resolution, pretty big, has decent optics on top. I think it works well for the telephoto because of like the natural bokeh depth of field that you get from the 5x optical system and stuff like that. Plus, the small sensor doesn't capture too much detail to even do a lot of over sharpening later on. It just would look very artificial. But what I find is that Apple really mistreats the ultra wide a little bit. I always thought that Apple just had a very small ultra wide, but then I looked like in terms of sensors, but then I looked at what the competition offers, and they all are pretty much in the same ballpark, somewhere between like 1 by 2.5 and 1 by 3 inches, right? And Apple, I believe, is 1 by 2.76 or something like that. So, and now they've updated it to 48 megapixel while actually keeping the exact same sensor size. And in good lighting conditions, honestly, I would like for Apple to use that objectively higher resolution to do a little bit more sharpening. You might not have the giant sensor area to get a lot of details, but at least you have the raw pixel count to use some of AI and shit like that to make the images a little sharper. Um, Obviously, there are some improvements that Apple can do, like from an f2.2 aperture, maybe to somewhere like I believe some competitors have like f2.0 or f1.9, so they let in a little bit more light onto that sensor. But in general, while there are shortcomings, and I don't deny them, I do believe that consistency, not just from photo to photo, but between each individual camera system, to how fast the camera app is. To we might like laugh, for example, at some of the things about camera control, right? But like what other phone has camera control? If you want to like program, for example, the Photos app or some other photo app to like the power button, that's it. That's your extra button. On the iPhone, you get double and triple click on the power button as customization options. You get double and triple tap back gestures, and you get the action button, of course, and now camera control, which not only allows you, of course, to open camera apps, but also to control the apps once you are inside them. So yeah, I do believe that the 16 Pro, for a variety of factors, like absolutely best in class videography, best in class consistency, now versatility in some ways, ProRAW, ProRes, camera control. While yes, I could see, for example, like an upcoming Xiaomi 15 Ultra, for example, that would have like a sensor, I believe 1 by 0.98, so it would be even larger technically than a full 1-inch sensor. Like I see that like legitimately beating that Apple's main camera. They will just have more data to work with. But that still isn't out there. Most of the actual competition right now has main camera sensors about the same size of the iPhone. A lot of manufacturers actually have gone a little bit away from like full 1-inch sensors. It's harder to achieve edge-to-edge sharpness. You get a little bit of rolling shutter problems in video capture. So yeah, while they won't give up on that, for example, for their Ultra models, which like technically those phones really exist only for the branding, so you just put in the best parts in there, and you don't sell too many models, so you don't really feel constricted ever by like even the supply chain of certain components. But yeah, overall I absolutely agree. I know this was a very long-winded way of saying, but yeah, I agree that the 16 Pro should have won here.
Another smartphone to come along and knock it off its post, and I think we're closer than ever to that. But for right now, iPhone's still the truth.
And by the way, criticism for Apple, I know I've criticized like the sensor sizes basically across the board on the ultrawide and telephoto. I could do the same on the selfie camera. But Apple wins this, in my opinion, despite not actually having increased the sensor of the main camera. Like, sure, 1 by 1.28 is pretty much great. Like, it rhymes. But like Samsung, for example, is 1 by 3.1 and 1 by 1.31, and which is basically the same size, which that is pretty much unparalleled. For years, Apple has actually been getting like super good results with actually like relatively small sensors, and Pixel was actually known for that for quite a while, where for a time they were actually reusing the same sensor over years and years and just improving on the algorithms thanks to newer image signal processors. But they were saying like, we know that sensor so well, we can use it for 3 or 4 years, right? And only now have they stepped up their game a bit. But at the time, ironically, when others have dramatically started to catch up when it comes to the image algorithm. And Steve, you're saying agreed, though. I feel good that I'm not just like preaching to somebody who completely disagrees. Obviously, I understand there will be some disagreements. There will be some Apple fanboy accusations or whatever. But in general, I just feel like it's still deserved. But yes, for example, if Apple keeps mostly the same camera hardware next year, I firmly expect them to lose that spot. But something tells me they have a few aces up their sleeve.
In the camera department. Next category. Best value.
Well, that's not
Every
iPhone,
year, this is the most
certainly.
interesting and competitive category because there are so many options that come out.
I
in
actually
the
don't know
value.
which one that. I did not pre-watch the video. I have seen, obviously, the results of the biggest category wins. So that's interesting.
Budget space,
me.
even some that are not on this table in front of me, that are super competitive and all have different things that they prioritize and at different price points. And that's always the question about value, isn't it? What price point are we going to have that qualifies it as a value phone? Should just be anything under $500 or anything under 400? Maybe that makes more sense. Or maybe it should just be anything that just has the absolute max value for the price that you can shove in a phone, even if it is a flagship. And that's actually what I'm doing. The fact is, it's just harder, though, for a more expensive phone to actually deliver on much more value. The classic law of diminishing returns. How can an $800 phone give you twice as much value as a $400 phone?
If they
It just
technically
can't.
do the same
So,
thing, right?
You know, Redmi every year has a ton of really competitive options. Also, it seems like Poco is always churning out at every single price point they possibly can.
True.
But what stood out to me this year, I do want to give a shout out to the Pixel 8a. It came out at $500 and has
That's a very Western specific take here.
a really good camera system in this price range, but it did kind of feel like it was clashing a little bit with the Pixel
thank you,
8.
thank
but
you.
also, the CMF Phone 1 came out this year.
No.
And this was a $200 phone that delivered a lot of value in a bunch of ways, but also in just fun and modularity and accessibilities and this unique design. And you don't see any really other, I guess one other orange phone on this desk, but this was a really interesting phone to come out and it was actually easy to recommend. So $200, it gets a shout out for sure. But my winner for best value for 2024, that's gonna go to the Nothing Phone 2A. So this phone launched at $350.
That's a very Western specific thing. Like, look, I understand there's probably a disconnect to how we perceive like the Realme and Poco like user interfaces and stuff like that. But nothing, Jesus.
It gave you a big, bright 120 hertz screen with uniform bezels all the way around. That's rare. Check. Flagship size,
those
5,000
bezels weren't
milliamp hour
too
battery
thin, though.
with 45 watt charging. Check. A serviceable 50 megapixel main camera plus an ultra wide if you need it. Check. Under display fingerprint reader. You know, it didn't benchmark super high, but their performance has always been really smooth. They do a great job optimizing their software. And then, of course, the glyphs on the back, however you feel about those. This was just one of those phones that costs way less than all the other flagships here, but as you use it, at least as I used it, it consistently feels as smooth as and as well thought out as any other flagship, especially with the smoothness of the software. So a big shout out to them for that. It keeps getting software updates. I hope it gets way more. Nothing Phone 2A, impressive value, 2024. There's your check. So then
I
next
guess-
category, best.
Like, I just don't have too much connection to that price range in general or to Nothing as a brand. So however you want to perceive them as high value, I'm at least happy that it's not like something like the Galaxy A50 series, which has become more and more of a joke in recent years.
Battery. There's been a lot more phones pushing the battery limits this year.
True.
And you know, this award is just for battery experience overall, which includes battery life. So I can't help but notice when there's way more 5,000, 5,500, 6,000 milliamp hour batteries in these big flagships than I've seen in a long time. But it's not purely just the biggest battery capacity that's gonna win you my award for this. I'm not just gonna give this to the 28,000 milliamp hour Energizer phone. That does exist every year. It's crazy. It's just peace of
Really?
mind,
Every year? I
right?
thought
Long
that was
battery
a
life is one
one-off.
thing, but then lots of good
Jesus,
battery
what is
maintenance features.
Energizer doing there?
Convenient fast charging is another thing. Like the big iPhones come out every year and they have really good battery life, but they just charge too slow. So the Samsung Galaxy S24
By the way,
Ultra.
I actually agree with that kind of criticism. Now, I would give iPhone a lot more slack here because I think that MagSafe is honestly one of the best charging solutions ever made because it's wireless charging with the comfort of like a wired charging system, right? Samsung does not charge fast enough, plus the S24 Ultra has lost basically every reputable battery comparison this year against both the 15 Pro and the 16 Pro Max. I know there was like one test by Mr. Who's the Boss where it won, but nope, sorry, complete outlier. Like the Vivo with 6,000 milliampere hours, I'm honestly not sure how they manage that in software, if they really aggressively like push it to maintain like tasks in the background or something like that. I know, for example, that Huawei for a few years was actually delivering really good battery life, but that's partially because they were kind of more aggressive than even Apple when it comes to closing background tasks. Yeah, I know which phone wins, and I actually think that makes sense because I do not think that the phone is compromised enough to lose any like specific category. But let's see what he has to
Comes
say.
out this year, has a 5,000 milliamp hour battery with room for the stylus as well. It also has 45 watt peak charging and wireless charging, and it just seemed to last forever. Like this is a phone you could use all day easily with this big bright screen. But that wasn't enough. That wasn't enough. There was almost a subcategory of what I would consider like mega flagships that came out this year that sort of took things to the next level. Oppo Find X8 Pro. Again, a late addition to the calendar. 5,900 milliamp hour battery, and also 80 watts of peak charging. So this can go 0 to 100 in a little under an hour. It also could do 50 watt wireless charging with the right AirVook charging pad. It's ridiculous. Still wasn't enough. The Vivo X200 Pro also came out this year, had a 6,000 milliamp hour battery and 90 watt charging.
Which is funny, the 90 watt wireless charging, the 90 watt charging is actually a downgrade over the previous generation, which I believe was 120. And the wireless
still wasn't enough because
also like went down because they like really, with the switch to silicon carbide batteries, prioritize capacity rather than charging speed. And I absolutely agree with that decision.
There's one phone that crossed my desk this year, again pretty late, that had two things that I hadn't really seen much at all during the calendar year, which was the new Snapdragon 8 Elite chip and a 7,000 milliamp hour battery. That's your winner, which is the Red Magic 10 Pro.
Yeah, it's
this
a gaming phone.
Gaming phone, and it is entirely designed around gaming with things like an exposed active fan that sacrifices water resistance for spinning up and keeping.
Yeah, so this is why I would never give this phone, for example, something like best big phone. Like, yes, it's nice for it to have an active cooling fan, which unfortunately also sucks down a lot more energy. Like I've seen tests where it basically like it maintains better than A18 Pro performance, but usually at the cost of like 50 to 60% more battery consumption because of the fan. The chip itself actually has very similar efficiency to the A18 Pro. But this is an IP54 certified device. Obviously, the iPhone has been IP68 for a long, long time. So that's water and dust resistance and submergence. And the iPhone has actually exceeded the 2-meter depth by for 30 minutes specification that is needed to reach IP68 for years and years. Like, don't forget, like all those examples where the iPhone was like dropped in the was dropped in a lake or whatever, or in the river, and like a month later, people were picking it up and it still worked. There are now phones that are IP69. They had some heat thermal resistance. Basically, I guess for jerry-rigs everything, like lighter test or something like that. But yeah, in general, this is a big compromise that I wouldn't really like accept these days. But hey, at the very least, it's better than the Red Magic 9 here, which used to not have any kind of water and dust resistance.
Keeping it cool when it's gaming and charging. But the Snapdragon 8 Elite chip has been like a superpower in a couple of phones that it started to show up in late this year. There's a couple of phones that have it, but it has been dramatically more efficient than the previous generation, which we love seeing. So it has that chip. Maybe leave a thumbs up if you want to see a video just about the Snapdragon 8 Elite. But then it also has a 7,050 milliamp hour battery. And so just that combo alone makes this a 2-day phone comfortably at 144 hertz, which is sick. You could also turn it down to 60 hertz and do even better than that if you want. And when you do have to charge it up, it'll go 0 to 100 in half an hour or so because it charges at 100 watts of peak charging. So it's just got a lot going for it. It also has all the battery maintenance features. You can cap it at 80% charging if you want. It's also got bypass charging to avoid thermal damage. There's just
Yeah, by the way, I'm actually not sure. Like, I know Google recently added bypass charging to the Pixel 9 series, which allows you to basically like when you're connected to the wall, your chip, your display, and stuff like that will get your power directly from basically the wall, and it won't be routed through like the battery, which obviously reduces wear and tear on the battery. It creates one fewer heat source inside the phone. Obviously you have to consider what happens then, like if you have that enabled, what will you still want your battery to charge, you don't want to enable that feature and suddenly it doesn't charge or whatever. That being said, it's a cool feature. I actually don't know how iPhone handles it, so if it doesn't, I hope they at least consider adding it at some point.
a lot in the battery department. Red Magic 10 Pro, Battery Champ, 2024. So our next category is the
Steve
best
saying SiC
design.
is nice. I assume SiC is, yeah, it would be silicon carbide, judging from the context. Hope Apple adopts it. Same. It doesn't seem to have any big drawbacks. I've seen some technical breakdowns that say that the battery would basically degrade a little faster. That being said, if you can add 15% higher capacity, and let's say it degrades 10% faster, right after 2 or 3 years, you would still end up with higher rest capacity from that battery than if you started with a regular lithium-ion battery with the current chemical.
If you hang out in the YouTube comment section long enough, you'll read things like, smartphones are just kind of boring these days. Like, they're all the same as last year. Have we reached peak smartphone?
I never cared about that kind of mentality. For me, a big part of that is also, I guess I'm more of a grateful person, which is not to tout my own horn here, but like I understand that like 2007 is when we first got the iPhone, right? I would argue it took up until 2010 with the iPhone 4 where we got like the very first like really good like modern smartphone with enough oomph from the A4 chip. You got the versatility, a high resolution screen with Retina display. You got the much better cameras, 5 megapixel HD recording, next year 8 megapixel in full HD recording, a massive graphics boost on the iPhone 4S, enabling games like Infinity Blade and stuff like that. That being said, like I fully understand that, of course, the rate of improvement was gonna come down, and I'm still just happy that we are where we are. Maybe in 10 years, I could argue, man, like we really need something to change up the form factor. But even the jump from the Snapdragon 8 Gen 3 to the 8 Elite and new materials for like the battery and like the way that displays have gotten like 2 times brighter over like the last 5 years or something like that, which is arguably a bigger jump than like in the decade before that. Like I guess I'm just super happy still. The slow rate of improvements to me just means that I don't have to annually upgrade. I can upgrade every 2 years, still find someone in the family or friend group who would want my old iPhone. I can sometimes upgrade every 3 years if I want to, and then really benefit from like stack up improvements for everything from like literally every camera would change in the meantime and stuff like that. There will be a node jump between like whatever processors I have and stuff like that. There is very likely to be like more memory inside the phone and stuff like that. Yeah, while I can obviously appreciate that, but phones have also gotten more expensive to compensate for that, right? When you look at, for example, the iPhone 6 and 6 Plus, right? The iPhone 6 Plus, the flagship of that generation, was cheaper than right now the base than even the Plus model is right now, right? So, and depending on how Apple targets the iPhone Air, it might even be cheaper than what the iPhone 17 Air is going to be. Sure, there's inflation to consider and stuff like that, but there was a lot more room to more quickly upgrade your phones. There was more reason to it, and it was in general cheaper to do. I would argue the state of upgrading your phone every 3 years right now is just as exciting as it used to upgrade your phone every 2 years, like 7 or 8 years ago.
Is nothing different anymore. And if you agree with that, you kind of have to ignore some of the most interesting stuff happening around the edges. Some of the most innovative and fascinating design choices that we've seen in a long time. Worth honoring a little bit in 2024. The CMF Phone 1 that I talked about earlier. This is one of those great examples. A super budget phone that tries to stand out by doing something a little bit different. Design. Like a fun design being the reason you buy this $200 budget phone.
Nah, sorry. Not when MagSafe does everything this phone does a lot better. Like, and I'm not even saying, oh, but MagSafe in a $200 phone, stuff like that. I'm like, don't make it $200. Make it $400. Adopt full Qi 2. Give it a faster chip. Make it out of materials that don't look like it's a Fisher Price device. And I will be 10 times happier, and you will have created a phone that will have much larger longevity for users, will give them a higher like resale price the moment they decide to upgrade. It will have longer longevity in the sense that not only can one user use it for longer, but by the moment you decide to hand it down to a parent that might not be as tech savvy or a grandparent, right, you just gain a lot from that because you give them a device that you yourself are comfortable with. So whenever they ask you questions about it, you are actually somewhat prepared. So to me, absolutely, like $200 phones are just like whenever also people are saying, well, these phones are getting upgrades for so and so many years. At that point, I'm like, so why would you buy a $200 new phone rather than like a $250 like used, refurbished, or heavily discounted phone that is a year or 2 years old and will literally destroy it still in absolutely every performance metric? Camera, well, performance, the main chip, build quality, battery life, and stuff like that.
Over others. I actually think from its big brother company, the Nothing Phone 2A did a lot of similar things. It's the glyph design on the back, the transparent stuff. They had some special editions. They thought a lot about design in this phone and connected it to the software, which I think is really cool. But when I'm giving a design award, I don't want to give it to anything that had a critical flaw. Like I want to give it to someone that just definitely didn't do anything wrong, like S24 or Pixel 9. But that would be boring. So my design award winner for 2024
is the trifold?
Is the Huawei Mate XT.
Okay,
AKA
I can sort of get
Look,
behind it. At least it's really, really different.
As I've seen the video on this phone, there were some rumors now about it maybe not being super durable.
Yep.
Honestly, probably true. There was articles about maybe some bad press being covered up because it's Huawei and this phone's coming straight out of China and they want to kind of cover that.
Yep.
Probably true. But the fact that a real smartphone company had the audacity to not just build a bunch of these, but build a lot of them and ship them all and actually build features around them that actually works. I actually remember reading those articles about, the spy shots of the CEO of Huawei using this unique triple folding thing on a plane. And I remember thinking, okay, yeah, but he knows he's being photographed. That's not a real phone. Not only did they actually do it, but this is a crazy impressive phone. It's super thin, it has the hinges, it has the battery distributed through everything, it's got the cameras on the back, they've got software features that work with both 2 and 3 panels. There's just so much going for it.
But at the same time, you showed this, right? And what happened on that third, level, right? Like you got the temperature for today. Like, was it really so difficult to see that on
both 2 and 3 panels?
There's just half, 2/3 of the screen.
Just so much going for it.
Don't get me wrong. I know that, for example, for white screen video, it's a lot better and stuff like that. But you really are compromising a lot. Steve, you're saying the audacity to ship an easily breaking. Wait, you're saying it's a 3K device. I assume you mean the price. Wasn't it like $4,000 because it was like some super exclusive model? Like, I don't think this is actually like a mass produced thing, right? Like, but then again, it's also really hard sometimes when it comes to Chinese currency and shit like that. But even let's say it's a 3K device, I definitely isn't a 2K device similar to like the Galaxy Z Fold. Yes, it more easily breaks, that's one thing, but also like all these compromises, it's just I don't know, like for all that pricing, I before I saw your message, I wanted to mention it being 4K. Now I'm not sure actually what the price was. um Huawei Mate XT Pro. Oh man, the names are getting really bad. Mate XT Pro price 4,600. Are those like import prices? $5,000. This one says it's 2,500 euros, but who knows? You can find it for 8,400 euros on AliExpress. The official start price at CNY 1999. Okay, let's see. To US dollars. Jesus Christ. So 19,999. That's $3,000. Considering honestly that a lot of prices in China are a lot lower, plus in Germany we would then get like a 19% value added tax. Yeah, quite honestly, this is probably more of a 4K device. But Steve, you are technically correct, which is technically the best way to be correct. It is in raw conversion around 3K. Which, my God, for these kinds of compromises,
I can't not give this the award. Very deserving of the design award for 2024. So the next category, conveniently, best foldable. So we added this new category last year just because it was becoming more clear than ever that foldables were, first of all, more plentiful than ever before. There's more options than ever before, and it feels like they're here to stay, at least for a while. So let's reward the good ones. And, you know, at the beginning of the whole foldables category, it was kind of all Samsung. Like they had that early lead because they dove in so early, and you know, they still make the Z Fold 6, and it's a solid phone, but I wouldn't say they're holding the torch anymore. I would actually say this phone right here, this is the Honor Magic V3. This is kind of the mantle right now for best overall foldable hardware. There's so much good about this hardware. I mean, it's extremely thin, it feels flagship. From the lack of a crease inside to how much battery and how much camera they fit in this phone, really, really sturdy hinge. This is a great, really solid piece. There's also the triple fold, you know, that's a crazy design as we already know, but
yeah.
I'm giving the award.
Which again, the triple fold means it has like three displays inside it then, because it folds twice. But yeah, I guess it just makes sense to call it the triple fold because it's like cool marketing, I guess.
Best foldable of 2024 to the Pixel 9 Pro Fold.
Oh,
I really like.
Really? Wasn't there like a Chinese device that was so much better in every way? Like, I know we didn't get a full-on successor to the OnePlus Open, unfortunately, but really? I knew the Pixel 9 Pro Fold wins another category, of which I would honestly agree with. I disagree with the presence of that category overall, but that's a different discussion. Seeing it here is a little bit unnerving to me. Max Maximus joining us from his workout saying, I saw import prices of close to 10,000. Which currency, man? Like, this is insane. Like, I know some people, especially like content creators, really wanted to work with the Mate XT Pro or Ultra, whatever. And I know they paid crazy prices. I mean, similar to how like those Russian YouTubers, right, paid a lot to get like the M4 MacBook Pros before they were even like shown off by Apple. But my God, 10K for like the Mate XT. Maybe it's cheaper now. Maybe like Chinese people would just say, oh, you know what? If it easily breaks, like maybe I can make twice the money back or something like that.
Like what Google did with the design and the hardware and the software of the second ever folding Pixel. You know, they did change a lot and it is still very usable while closed, but they trimmed up all the dimensions, they flattened the sides, they improved the hinge, the cameras are all better, and it feels, among the world of folding Android phones that we have right now, like the most polished. At least there's a lot of good Android stuff going on to take advantage of the folding screen. Like if you forced me to use a folding phone right now, as much as I would want the hardware of the Honor, I would pick the Pixel Fold. And I came close to dailying this phone for quite a while in this year.
Oh yeah,
Really big fan
that
of this
was
phone.
that phone, yeah.
And if you've got to have a flip, because the flipping thing is different from the folding thing, I would still say Samsung carries a torch there as well.
Wait,
so.
not Motorola?
Little shout out to the Z Flip 6.
Okay, that feels like he just didn't test too many flip devices.
Trophy for you. Sorry, but shout out to the Pixel 9 Pro Fold. So next category, one that's been here again for all 10
that
of these,
one I know.
is the Most Improved Award. So Most Improved year over year. My first thought when putting this category together was, this might be the hardest one to give out this year. Like what really stood out as the biggest delta, the biggest change? A lot of times it's one that actually went wrong the previous year and sort of righted the ship, or maybe took a big leap in something that was bad the previous year. But what really had the biggest change from its previous year? I mean, you have the Oppo Find X8 Pro, which, okay, much brighter screen this year. They've got improved cameras. This new back is really nice, and also it's got the new chipset and the new software.
Much brighter screen. I wonder if he's basically talking marketing terms or real life difference. So the Huawei made a launching globally, but that's not the trifold, right? That's the regular one. Yeah, okay, so that's the regular, the double fold. Yeah, by the way, I heard that Qualcomm won the first round against ARM when it comes to like patent infringement, which is really good because ARM was like promising to go around destroying every single XLE chip and stuff like that. So the Oppo Find X8 Pro. Gonna go to the review, gonna go to the lab test. The display delivers around 13 to 1400. This is a 75% white test pattern. So this really doesn't benefit from like some HDR tricks where like 1% of the screen goes to like 5,000 nits, even though some put it in marketing. Also, these screens, I believe they're BOE screens, or they're definitively different from Samsung's latest panels. This is why some panels can go, for example, like the Pixel 9 Pro to like 2400, the iPhone 1800 to 2000. And for example, why even the Galaxy S24 Ultra, which uses still a older generation of their AMOLED tech, doesn't give you like some of those crazy brightness peaks. But now I'm curious about, what about the Oppo Find X7? Let's even go with the Ultra, right? Because I'm not sure there was a Pro last time. This is also the phone that, by the way, does have that 1-inch sensor. So the next Ultra is like rumored to get like an even slightly larger sensor. Let's see how they manage that optically and software-wise. So display, yeah, well, I guess it is brighter then, yeah, which you could argue that still wasn't too dark, but I honestly thought they would be closer together. I just thought because 13 or 1400 isn't that high, so how much lower could the X7 even have been? But I guess it makes sense. So yeah, that's technically a true statement by Marquez. Angelica saying hello to everyone joining you. You are at a child's birthday party. Well, have fun and happy birthday to the child. She and the child saying us also hello, Aileen Hava. So happy birthday to her. We have all our MarkTech Pro Max supporters here in the chat. So поздравляю всех, knowing that Angelica here speaks Russian as one of our supporters. So really glad to have you all here, including the full party. But yeah, by the way, this is like 4,500 nits in HDR scenarios. This is the exact same bullshit that I'm mentioning, right? If this is your final result, really those HDR things are completely meaningless. Yeah.
And it's a little more squared up. And that's nice. I don't know if it's gonna win most improved though. And actually, for the first time in a while, the base iPhones were in consideration for this one. The iPhone 16, this generation, did the most relative to the previous base iPhone to get it close to the pros that we've ever seen. And that's good for us. Like more RAM, great chipset, improved cameras and the new layout, and obviously it has the camera control button that the pros have. But it also isn't that much better. I think it's pretty clear though, the most improved smartphone over last year's version. Yeah,
I wonder if the 17 non-Air, the regular 17 model, could actually have a shot at this award next year for promotion and maybe some bigger camera changes. We still don't know what Apple's broader plans with the battery are or something like that. So yeah, but in general, I just don't care.
The Pixel 9 Pro Fold. The foldable Pixel was something we'd wanted for a long time. And the first Pixel Fold last year was a cool idea, right? Like we all wanted to see it and Google finally delivered it. But if we're being honest with ourselves, it didn't really excel in any way with the hardware especially. Like it was cool seeing Android could improve and handle the bigger screen on the inside, but I mean, that thing had some pretty thick bezels in there. It didn't even fold flat. I'm gonna say that again. It didn't even fold flat.
Yeah.
So the second generation
really
Pixel Fold here represents a glow up in every single way. Like every square millimeter of this got better.
Yeah, if this one had a really nice processor, then I would probably agree. I still think it's a bit too compromise of a final product. Like in terms of battery life, it really doesn't deliver. Like, let's look at the Pixel 9 Pro first. The XL, I guess that makes the most sense. Then we look at battery life. So that's 12 and a half hours here. And then we look at the Pixel 9 Pro Fold. Man, what a name. And we'll find that it has good display brightness, but yeah, it cannot even match that. Obviously, it has a smaller battery for a larger screen, so those are not bad results. Wait, is that closed up or open? Did they comment on that? The average pixel is average when folded as well. Okay, it gets better when... Okay, so it apparently then is pretty aggressive in how it trims down on processor usage, I guess, in order to... I mean, this is a phone that will also struggle with cooling because of the foldable design. So it just makes sense to limit its power consumption wherever possible, even versus the regular 9 Pro.
I think a lot of us were expecting to see a second generation OnePlus foldable, but they just didn't make it. But this is kind of the closest I think we could see to
yeah,
that.
but the OnePlus
much better
Open
cameras,
was already
much
not
better,
bad,
thinner hinge.
so
the whole thing is skinnier. The bezels on the inside are much better.
But
it folds flat. There's less crease. The outside screen is better. It's brighter.
Foldable.
Everything is better. So just from inside to outside. Well done, Google.
By the way, what really rubs me the wrong way is that Google does have some decent ideas sometimes. For example, the software for like a foldable device. I'm just angry that they're delaying like all of these successes they could have against the iPhone by waiting for a company like Samsung to push the envelope first. Then a lot of Chinese competitors even join in, and only later then does Google jump in, usually with a phone that at first feels completely outdated, then slightly catches up in Gen 2 and 3. But by that point, like, sure, Apple hasn't made a foldable device, but the problem is, in the meantime, Google could have helped all those other phones build significantly more mind and market share, would have especially been hurtful to Apple to, like, when a lot of, like, pro users, a lot of people willing to pay around, like, $2,000 were saying, you know what, I'm getting a fold device. They're so well optimized these days. Google has invested so much in like good software and stuff like that, and they're partnering with all these companies to give you good hardware too. but instead we had to wait until like the Pixel 9 Pro Fold, and the same was with the tablets. How long did it take us to get like decently optimized even Google apps for Android tablets until Google decided to make some of their own tablets? And at least in that era, they had like the Nexus lineup, which was partnering with other companies, which meant they were faster at pushing them out. But then they forgot them after the Nexus lineup dropped, and then whatever, like they experimented with Chromebook bullshit and stuff like that, and then now we have like the Pixel tablet, which is this weird like almost like Nest Hub thing that is designed to be attached to a speaker. It's really weird.
Well done. So the next award is going to go to the bust.
I actually don't know which one was
this is a weird one. This is the award you hate to have to give, but I give it every year anyway to a phone that gets a shout out for how badly things went. But this is a little different from previous years, and you'll see why. I'm going to just jump right into it. I'm giving the Bust of the Year award to the Asus Zenfone 11 Ultra.
Okay, I guess that's because he's angry that there is no small version.
Big red trophy for this one, Asus. The 11 Ultra did not win anybody's favorite phone. Now, if it's any consolation, this is the first year that I'm giving this award to a phone that's
not broken.
Not actually that bad of a phone. It's fine. It's an okay phone. If you bought it, I'm sure you'd be okay with it. But the point is, it's more representative of the whole category.
But I always find it funny that ASUS even makes like an Ultra phone with almost no branding recognition, right? ROG is an ASUS branding, right? Republic of Gamers, ASUS, yes. By the way, sorry for blinding you. Like I'm currently blinding myself because I'm using like the brightness override in the OS that can let my screen go to up to 1600 nits in SDR brightness. And for you, I guess it's just from the white image. But if you have that, why are you creating an Ultra phone that is not a gaming phone, that is in no way actually like competitive with other flagships? It's just a more, I guess, a calmer version of the ROG phone.
Because the Zen phones that came before the Zen phone, well, you remember them, right?
The minis.
Those were actually really interesting phones. They won previous awards. They took up some space in our heads as smartphone enthusiasts, where they were actually giving us what we said we wanted, which was a flagship phone that was actually small, that was actually one-handable, that fit everything we wanted into a compact size. And then they just turned it into this, just another generic big phone.
And by the way, like this, for example, like camera module is completely ugly. There is no symmetry to like how close it is to the top portion, to how close it is to that corner. The camera arrangement is weird, where it just feels like this is just empty space at this point. Like that works almost for a gaming phone with random shit like the lines here. But really, if you're making a regular flagship, why are you accepting these compromises? I know why. That's because your main phone is that ROG phone. And before that, in a way, at least the phones you were investing the most love in were like those Zen phones, like that were like 5.8 inches and something like that. Like this is just weird, and it's so unbalanced in terms of like design, price, when you look at what the competition offers.
It's fine, but we lost something today with the Zen phone. It's gotten to the point where I genuinely don't know if we're gonna keep giving out a best small phone award. Like phones have, like I said, gotten bigger and bigger and bigger. And I gave you that stat earlier about how the small phones are all bigger than the big phones used to be. So does that mean we're gonna be giving out a best small phone award to a 6.5-inch screen phone in a year or two?
No, but to a 6.3 inch. No, my assumption is that the best small phone next year is undeniably going to be the iPhone 17, where like just the inclusion of ProMotion will just catapult it to best small phone. Especially since we are not like after next year, so in 2026, we're not even supposed to be getting like a lot of the small models from Samsung, right? They're reshuffling their like S series brand because their Ultra is just so dominant there that I'm not even sure what exactly. My solution would be kind of to unify the Plus and the regular S, make it a little bit more one-handed, like maybe 6.5 4 or 5 inches, but not quite as big as 6.8, and make it a little thicker with a nice battery inside, and give it cameras that are not 2 generations old at this point. Yeah, maybe something like
This
that.
doesn't feel right. But maybe by that time, phones will be even bigger and it'll feel like a small phone. I don't know. I haven't decided yet. Maybe your comments will help me. But this is the bust of the year. So our 10th and final category in the 10th year of the awards, it's the MVP.
Oh, I actually don't know which one won this. I actually don't know. I forgot he has the phone of the year. I almost assumed that big phone of the year was like the phone of the year.
Of the year. There's a lot of choices.
I know it's not the iPhone. I know the iPhone only won 2 awards. That's what people told me first on Twitter and stuff like that. Oh my God, what would it be? Like the Oppo or the Vivo, I guess?
Feels like the highest pressure award. It's also my favorite just because...
Like, it cannot be the Samsung. You cannot give it to an 8 Gen 3 device when the 8 Elite is out. I know you didn't give it to the iPhone. Like, you cannot give it to a nothing device. You cannot give it to the Pixel 9 Pro, which didn't even win best camera, which was usually the main reason to even consider a Pixel.
What phone do I choose to carry the torch to sort of represent the entire year in smartphones? With all that we've just talked about, with all the exciting features and the risk takers and the comeback stories and the bust of the year and all this stuff, which phone gets the award? And I think my philosophy here is I am rewarding overall greatness. So there are a couple runner-ups here that absolutely deserve real spotlight for a minute.
Okay.
Vivo X200 Pro,
Okay,
especially. So
that
like,
one didn't win?
I didn't even review this phone, but again, it came out late this year, and this phone, this is like got it all territory. It's got the awesome super bright screen. It's got the great chipset. It's got these incredible cameras and that shooting experience, great battery life, super fast charging. What doesn't it have? Maybe just the Snapdragon 8 Elite chip at this point, although it does have a pretty great MediaTek chip that's no slouch and that enables a lot of its features.
Yeah, the Dimensity 9400 is actually, for example, better at gaming. I treat those pretty interchangeably. Yes, the Dimensity 9400 will not reach the same single core max performance, but that's usually also partially because like Qualcomm went ham on the clock speeds. And usually when you are actually looking to target peak single core clock speeds or the maximum multi-core performance, you're so far outside of like decent power consumption metrics that these like benchmarks mean very little to me. The best chip of the year is still the A18 Pro, in my opinion. If Apple gave it slightly faster memory and put it in a phone with slightly better cooling, which again, those are factors that have nothing to do with the actual like main chip die. I think even without like more GPU or more CPU cores, it would just give you the best overall experience.
Earl, you're in can't really go wrong territory here. But I keep, I'm looking around. There's some other really good ones here, and I can't help but look over back at the Pixel 9 Pro Fold. From being such a big comeback story for the Pixel Fold series and being such a good phone, a foldable that I would actually daily to this day.
I mean,
and doing so
daily something means very little if you have access to all those devices. Would you spend your money on the Pixel 9 Pro Fold if it was like, if money was an issue, but if it was also realistically your only phone, like you couldn't put anything else because, well, your work wouldn't like really be comfortable to be carrying around 2 phones and stuff like that.
Right? This feels like I should highlight it, so here we are. But it didn't win. You know what else feels worth highlighting though? This was the year of the base iPhone, especially getting way more praise than the Pro iPhones. This was the most complete base iPhone they've ever made. It's getting Apple Intelligence and all that, but it also got more RAM, new colors. I like the matte rails. This was a really good year for not spending $1,500 on an iPhone, but also in the smartphone awards, I typically
$1,500 is $100 more than the 512 gigabyte configuration of the iPhone Pro Max. Like, it's probably the 512 gigabyte iPhone Pro Max plus value added tax in most US regions. It's really not fair to say the iPhone is $1,500.
Want to give a shout out to the phone that I am currently daily driving. I could use basically any phone, so maybe that means something to you. And so that would be this one.
Yeah, I
knew
the
Pixel 9 Pro.
He uses
XL,
the Pixel.
that is kind of dinged up and scratched, but this is the phone I use. I use the XL over the smaller one just because of the extra battery life. But it didn't win.
Thank
We're rewarding
God.
greatness
I
here.
was afraid for a moment when he was. Is it going to be the Oppo? Or did I miss something in the iPhone one?
The MVP for 2024 is a Samsung Galaxy.
Oh, that's why I thought. Okay, so maybe I actually saw it. Nah. Oh, that's a bad choice. That's a really bad choice. Like, versus the iPhone, it loses in battery, in performance, even sustained performance, display brightness. It makes some of that up with the anti-reflective coating. In camera, except for good lighting condition telephoto images, what does it win? The stylus? Like, it's literally worse than the 16 Pro Max in basically every way. Even that 45-watt charging that he brought up, it doesn't sustain it too well. Plus, the iPhone's wireless charging is now faster. What the actual F, Marquez? That's a weird choice. Especially for a phone that you specifically yourself chose not to daily drive anymore.
Galaxy S24 Ultra. This phone is just so good at everything.
Yeah.
Literally everything. I don't know how many of you are golfers, but let me just make a quick analogy. This phone is 2024 Scotty
Nope.
Scheffler. How
No
is he so
idea.
good at everything? He's an incredibly long driver, but he's also one of the most accurate drivers on tour. He also leads tee to green strokes gained. He's also making every putt inside 10 feet. He has the short game. How is he so good at everything? But that's this phone. It's kind of boring,
In
actually.
what
And I think
way?
a lot of golf fans will appreciate
It
that.
loses.
So is Scotty, kinda. But that's the point, is it's not making a ton of headlines for any one flashy thing or any one bad thing. It's just so good. So if you want to reward a single phone with a great screen,
Okay,
a
this
great
feels
chip,
like he
a
just-
great battery, great cameras, great software,
I would have
great
given it
support,
at this point
great
to the
durability.
Vivo
Even
over
the
this.
anti-reflective coating on the screen is way above average. Even the vibration motor is good. Even the speakers are good. And I don't
By the
even
way,
use this.
both literally way worse than the iPhones. Both the vibration motor and the speakers are worse than the 16 Pro Max.
Stylus. So this is the phone that I actually used the most during 2024, and I think probably of the last 6, 7, 8 years of reviewing smartphones, this is the phone that I've come back to after reviewing a phone more than any other. I think I use this phone for like 9 months out of the year, which doesn't sound like that much, but for me,
I mean, yeah,
that's a
but
long time.
that's because of when
this
it
phone-
came out. Like this is literally like bias in the opposite direction. It's not like recency bias. It's comfort bias. It's because it came out early. You got to use it early. Like you got exposed to it relatively quickly. Jesus.
It just does everything right. It deserves this award. It might not be the flashiest. It might be the most boring choice here, but I fully think it deserves it. This one carries the torch. I'm looking forward to seeing the sequel, but S24 Ultra, that's their phone of the year. And with that, thank you for 10 years of the Smartphone Awards. I don't get to do this for 10 years without you guys. Obviously, the support and you watching means everything. And it's kind of the greatest job ever, getting to test all these different phones and review them all and get my honest feedback and thoughts on them, and to have that actually count for something. So it's motivating to me to want to make the next one even better than ever before. So 10 down, 10 more to go maybe. Catch you guys in the next one. Peace.
Oh, my messages actually work. I tried to type something in the chat from my main account. I wanted to respond to some guys. I just want to let you know, weird choice. Wanted to get some feedback. But now my secondary account, which is my non-premium account, which I use to monitor it, now that one works. Okay, I'm at this point really confused. Can I not send messages in my own chat? Like I tried to respond for half the video to you guys in the chat, so I can do it relatively quickly. So here, view channel. This is my own video. I can give myself a like, which is funny. Oh, I can set goals. Oh, okay. Why wasn't there before? Okay, maybe YouTube just. Let me just go again. Weird choice to select the S24 Ultra. Yeah, and now it works. Okay, so I have no idea when YouTube works or doesn't. Maybe it's just the YouTube app on iPad was a little bit broken. But yeah, I just wanted to play around a little bit with chat, seeing that the regulars are here, and it just wouldn't do it. So guess I'm as stupid as I sometimes am when it comes to Google tech. But yeah, thankfully it works, and I gave myself another like, which also doesn't hurt the channel. Yeah, so this was the 2024 awards. Have definitely some disagreements. That's why I put weird choice to select the S24 Ultra in the chat. I think when it comes to best camera, I agree, but this is honestly where covering the runners up was very important, like highlighting the successes of the Vivo X200 Pro, for example. With the battery, yeah, honestly, it's hard to compete with the 7,000 milliampere hour battery of the Red Magic. Let's actually go to GSM Arena here. Red Magic. Hello. 10 Pro. Is it not there? Whatever I type today just doesn't work. Whether it's in the chat or here, it doesn't have a review. But by the way, you see it does compromise on some things here. Like the main camera size is not 1 by 1.3, it's 1 by 1.5. The ultra wide is, I believe, that makes it smaller than the iPhone's ultra wide. And then it has a macro camera, so it doesn't even have a telephoto camera. Yikesy. Okay, so I believe that selfie camera is about the same size on the iPhone, though, but it is an under display camera, so the output quality is actually pretty bad. But yeah, that's silicon carbide. That's actually good to know how to write this. I believe somebody wrote it in the chat before. Steve said sick is nice, but he just wrote it SE small c, SI small c. So good to know. Yeah, this one doesn't yet have a review here, but I'll keep an eye on it. And when I look at the Magic 10 Pro, wait, what's the compromise versus the 10 of the 10 Pro versus the 10 Pro Plus? Is it what? Different. Wait, but that one has a review. I'm so confused. Okay, so it doesn't get too bright. I'm not like this is bad brightness, but it's not like what we saw. And yeah, 17 hours, pretty good. This is, I believe, this is basically equivalent to the X200 Pro. But the Oppo. This is the Oppo Find X8, not the Pro. But if we look, for example, here in comparison to the 16 Pro Max, that one beats this one out. But obviously, in stuff like gaming, this is where this one really excels. And yeah, definitely Vivo, good results here to finally beat the iPhone. Definitely takes a lot more capacity to do so, and some phones with a lot more capacity still cannot do so. So congratulations to actually achieving that. And yeah, like picking Samsung as the best phone of the year just is weird. That being said, we are not fully done today. There's a little bit of Apple news and rumors that I just wanted to quickly recap. I'm not sure if I'll be streaming. I actually am working on Christmas, so I'm only celebrating New Year's Eve today this year. So technically I could stream on Wednesday evening, but honestly I'm not sure if I will have the energy. Or I could stream on Tuesday afternoon before work, so more like 1 or 2 p.m. rather than 5 or 6 p.m., which is more usual time. So, but as always, I'll let you know. Follow me on Twitter, and you will know. And if something urgent comes up tomorrow, I could also stream tomorrow. But I doubt that we'll have something that interesting to cover to do back-to-back streams. So, according to Mark Gurman, we actually are getting a lot of stuff here for when it comes to Apple's smaller product categories and some of the stuff they are working on in the background. Not sure which specific features here will actually make it to market. We've had rumors similar to that for quite a few years, but let's see what's happening. According to Mark Gurman, there are a couple of health features for AirPods that Apple is working on. Obviously, this adds to a lot of reports that we've heard over the year. According to the newsletter, Apple is working on a wide variety of features, including a heart rate monitor, which obviously that functionality is already in the Apple Watch, a temperature sensor, same, and new sensors that will keep track of a slew of physiological measures. No idea. Apple is primarily focused on develop the heart rate sensor at the moment. Like physiological measures, I guess they could add here some data to like measuring like your body composition of like water, fat, muscle mass, and stuff like that. In internal testing, Apple is noticing more accurate heart rate info off the Apple Watch, off of the Apple Watch, but Gurman reports that AirPods aren't too far off. We don't have details on either health features. This is the kind of thing that I see Apple experimenting with, but then never making it to market because Apple Watch already exists, and adding cost and therefore price to AirPods just really would clash poorly with how the AirPods are positioned. When you actually look at the AirPods Pro being $250, you'll find that in the real world, they are often discounted as low as like $180 or something like that. And at that price point, they actually compete pretty well with like other companies. If Apple starts to make it $300 and now it's more of a $220 or $30 product in the end, while sure, hopefully the profit margins are still nice, why would you cut off a certain part of the market that just doesn't want to spend more than $200? Yeah, that's a bit weird. So the timeline is over the coming years, so you basically can expect a lot to be canceled and a lot to be shuffled around here. There's a reason why Mark Gurman isn't fully committing to anything. Then there are cameras for AirPods. This project was previously canceled, got revived because of AI. The problem with AirPods is I'm wearing earpods, not AirPods right now. But like, where would you position that camera? We've had talks about basically infrared cameras, so you can do like swipe gestures and play and pause gestures right next to it. But then the question is, what are the advantages versus the sensor that already exists on the AirPods Pro, where you swipe up and down, you click and double tap and stuff like that on it? Like, how much more cost does it add versus how many new features? So again, like he says, right now it's like a priority for both AI and AirPods teams, but still a couple of years away. So my question is, what exactly is the implementation here? And if those are cameras that are supposed to like connect you to your outside world, your ears, where you will have hair in the way, you'll have like your earlobes and stuff like that, and pressing on it, and you'll just have different compositions of faces and stuff like that. What will you do? Will you like change your face angle, like, and look at things and see, like that? This is just such a weird thing. We've already heard of AirPods with cameras, and I was actually one of the few people who was like, yeah, this is legitimately a ridiculous idea, not just, oh, let's see what happens. I was like, what? But then I actually read the report. That was one of the times, I apologize, where I reacted before I actually read the report, and it said like infrared cameras, right? And I was like, oh, okay, guess like some swipe gestures and stuff like that in the air could make sense. But the way he is wording it here makes it sound more like we are talking regular cameras, and he himself says that there's basically a chance that it gets canceled again because it was canceled before and was revived because of Apple's adoption of AI. Yeah, we are obviously due for AirPods Pro 3 next year. Hopefully with like a nice H3 chip, hopefully one that makes it to AirPods Max. But yeah, I wouldn't really bet on any of this coming in AirPods 3. If anything, I would expect AirPods 3 to continue their focus on health features related to hearing, actually, which I mean, that's what those devices are, and then continually slightly improve everything from audio quality, transparency mode, noise cancellation, right? All those things, we're improving them is actually marketable on a pair of like wireless earbuds, and not like, oh, it has a few health features, but those impact battery life like crazy, and they don't even work as well as on the Apple Watch. So I honestly don't know what Apple's final goal would be if they implemented those features. If they managed to do it without greatly increasing the cost, maybe that sensor that already detects that it's like hitting your skin, right? Maybe that sensor just easily becomes like a heart rate monitor, but I just wouldn't bet on an implementation like that being actually like reasonably cheap, and that Apple wouldn't hand off some of that cost to the end user. So to me, this is just like, I feel like this is just like Mark Gurman regurgitating some insider info he's had for a while, and basically by the end of the year he didn't have that much more to cover. Speaking of more small things here, but this one I assume would have a pretty big impact on people who actually decide to get it. Apple is reportedly developing new smart home doorbell with support for Face ID. So you can already see some solutions here by companies like Ring. Also coming from Bloomberg's Mark Gurman, saying that Apple is basically working on a doorbell with advanced facial integration, facial recognition. Like, he does not specify how that sensor would work, if it's like a legitimate 3D time of flight sensor to what we have on actual Face ID, or if it would be more of like just a good camera, right? And of course, it would integrate wirelessly with smart home locks. I mean, that's kind of the bare minimum for such an accessory. The idea is that the doorbell could automatically unlock the door for a home's resident by scanning their face, just like Face ID lets them into their phone. Again, obviously depends a lot on the implementation, could potentially make this a pretty expensive accessory, but I guess if it works well, yeah, it could be worth it to some. He says it won't come to the market before the end of next year at the soonest, so suggesting it's more of a 2026 or more of like even like a 2027 product. It would also use Apple's in-house networking chip, which I assume would be meant to keep costs down. So, but there's nothing crazy here. Apple is expected to expand its reach into the smart home market significantly next year with the release of a new smart home control device, which can reportedly attach to your walls and potentially a speaker base. Think of it as a Google Nest Hub of sorts. We'll also be getting a refresh to the Apple TV and HomePod Mini next year. Speaking of HomePods and Apple Home accessories, supposedly we are getting that new HomePod with a 7-inch display, an A18 chip, and more. This is according to, I love how Rene Ritchie used to call them, the randomly accurate Digitimes. They're pointing here to a supply chain, basically, leaker, saying that the Tianma supplier, who we've covered, is one of the smaller, I guess, but still in like the top 4 or 5 of screen suppliers in China, would be supplying this, and Apple basically got extremely competitive prices from them of $10 per panel. Should be noted that does not mean that implementing the screen would only cost $10. You would obviously have to have a screen controller, bezels in there. You would have to make sure architecturally that the screen doesn't like ruin your audio quality. You would have to make sure that like the camera and stuff like that are nicely integrated. But definitely, if Apple manages to keep costs low, that would help them stay somewhat close to the current $300 price of the regular HomePod. Obviously, one thing that would stand in the way of that would be the integration of the A18 chip, supposedly most likely here to support Apple Intelligence. My expectation here that this would be a heavily binned down chip, like Apple could use a chip with a lot of its CPU disabled, a lot of its GPU disabled, and as long as it still has like one performance core working and maybe two e-cores and maybe one or even just two or even just one GPU cores, but as long as the neural engine works, and I guess you would still pair it with something like 8 gigs of RAM, which of course would be a monumental difference to what we currently have in the latest gen HomePod. But yeah, let's see. So supposedly this is a second half of 2025 product. According to Quo and other leakers, it was delayed a bit to optimize the software a little bit. It would basically have like a screen on top of it. Some said roughly 6 inches. This one is saying 7 inches. And it would be one of those products that could like get like Apple's wireless networking chips and stuff like that. It would integrate with Apple Home and like stuff like Matter and stuff like and basically home control systems. That being said, anything can happen, anything can be canceled at this point. We've heard, I believe, from Mark Gurman in the past already that Apple is working on a plethora of like home accessory products. But as I have said in the past, it's very unlikely that the majority of them make it to market. There would just be too much cannibalization. It would be difficult to market all of them at the same time. But at least here, the two things we are covering today, they're not like really designed to cannibalize each other. Like if anything, they kind of work well together, because if you have that doorbell with Face ID at the front, you have like a HomePod that obviously still has speaker functionality, but maybe stuff like FaceTime. It could show you like your home cameras, including like your doorbell. There is some synergy here, and if Apple prices them at least somewhat fairly, I could see a decent amount of like iOS, macOS people really preferring that over any other solution. And throughout all of it, Apple is supposedly talking about how their privacy focus is going to be like one of their best marketing points for these kinds of home gadgets. One of the gadgets that a lot of people have asked to return, because Apple used to make it in the past, would be an Apple-made router. In this case, we had like Airport and Airport Extreme in the past. But supposedly we shouldn't be expecting that anytime soon. So while Apple is working on their own Wi-Fi and Bluetooth modem, supposedly there isn't any like direct plans to integrate them in a router-like solution. That chip is called Proxima at this point, and the reason why I wanted to cover this, and a good friend of the channel, the show, me on Twitter, James Atkinson, pointed out that this was a very weird wording, and I kind of like thought the same. And it says the Proxima chip is so sophisticated it could theoretically turn a home device like an Apple TV or HomePod into a wireless access point. Google has released products like this before, including a mixed Wi-Fi router and smart speaker. One thing that really made me wonder about this, like if Proxima is just a Wi-Fi modem, I mean, sure, it can handle multiple in, multiple out. If you give it a lot of potential bandwidth, it could do like its own job while also like transmitting that job. You could optimize it for basically just output, right? But a router still usually uses a chip with like real processing cores, mainly CPU stuff, to manage all its workload, to smartly delegate, like where does most of the bandwidth flow, right? How many devices are we simultaneously connected to? So I didn't get it. Does Mark Gurman suggest that Proxima would integrate some kind of basically self-reliance, like maybe like low power chips or like efficiency cores, basically? Um, is that what he means as so sophisticated? But quite honestly, I couldn't tell you. Like maybe Mark Gurman just honestly doesn't know too much about how routers work and stuff like that. Like the Proxima chip, from everything that we've heard thus far, would not be enough to turn a home device like an Apple TV or HomePod into a wireless access point. If anything, that functionality would come from the fact that Apple TV and HomePod still have their main chips. But if you put it just in a router, you would have to then connect it to some kind of chip. Maybe Apple at this point mass produces A16 chips for cheap in the United States because TSMC opened up their 4 nanometer fab there. Maybe something like that could be paired. It still would be mostly overkill, especially because of the integrated GPU stuff. Yeah, but maybe he just refers to the fact that Proxima has so much bandwidth and that basically Apple TV or HomePod could basically share their connection, especially if you maybe connect them through like Ethernet, which would be a problem for the HomePod because we have never gotten a HomePod with Ethernet thus far. So again, I just really wanted to cover this because it kind of all goes hand in hand. I mean, some home accessories like a doorbell, a HomePod successor that could actually oversee all of those home accessories, all those kinds of things where Apple works on new chips and new sensors all the time. And how could they integrate it into like a product that that had died quite a while ago? Well, maybe they could like make a router again. But apparently one isn't in the works, so this is purely speculation from Mark Gurman. He also notes that the wireless features of these upcoming Apple TV and HomePods wouldn't be a highlight at all if Apple even chooses to enable wireless access point functionality at all. So he has no idea how Apple basically plans to market their first generation of networking chips. My expectation is Apple just wants to add Wi-Fi 6E to the Apple TV, and my expectation is Apple wants to have something newer inside HomePods that isn't limited to Wi-Fi 4. I could even see them use Proxima and then maybe disable the 6 gigahertz network because it's just not necessary for HomePods. But then just use Wi-Fi 6 and maybe even 6E protocols to better leverage like multi-device connectivity to routers these days. And then with their second generation, they would do almost the same thing, but with Wi-Fi 7 at that point, target faster speeds. And then on the HomePod, they could still even, just because logistically it makes sense to use their modems wherever they can. And maybe they have some modems where the binning was not that great and they don't support the maximum Wi-Fi 7 speeds and stuff like that, but it could still be a decent modem, of course, because the HomePod definitely does not need 4.8 gigabits per second downloads or uploads. While simultaneously the Apple TV that follows the next Apple TV then has at least even better functionality. So yeah, but at least for now we're not looking at successors to AirPod Express or something like that. As much as some people would want it to, a part of those devices' functionality was also basically like using them for stuff like Time Machine and basically backups of your devices. Now that Apple is really hard pushing for iCloud and making a lot of good money there, I just don't see them implementing that into routers again, nor do I see much need to have specifically Apple-designed routers. The last thing is actually not a rumor, but a piece of news. It's a bit of a public service announcement here. The European Union is basically shutting down smartphones that don't have USB-C ports. Right now, that has not stopped Apple from selling like the iPhone SE or older gen iPhones than iPhone 15 inside the European Union, or countries like Switzerland that integrate with the free market regulations of the European Union. But it seems like right now those devices are becoming slowly listed as unavailable. Maybe Apple just has enough supply in the broader European Union, so they haven't yet hit the point of where resupplying those devices just doesn't make sense. I mean, a new iPhone SE is coming in 3 months. They obviously have iPhone 15 and iPhone 16 as alternatives to anybody wanting an iPhone 14 or 14 Plus. So by the time that regulation actually comes into full effect and they are effectively forbidden from selling them, I just expect them to keep selling out of as much inventory as they have and just not fulfilling like inventory anymore. Like basically like I don't think that Apple is producing at all iPhone SE, current gen iPhone SE, iPhone 14 and 14 Plus anymore. But that being said, the actual regulation comes only into effect December 28th. So I believe next year, not this year, right? French website last week reported the iPhone will no longer be sold. Or is it this year? Did I? Oh yeah, it's this year. Okay, yeah. That now that makes sense. So that probably means that Apple is just has basically no inventory anymore in Switzerland, but then in a week, basically all European countries will be facing all of those things. Good to know. I live in the European Union, but because I'm just not interested in buying iPhone SEs and iPhone 14s anymore, I guess I kind of skipped over that news in the past. That being said, we're almost 2 hours into the stream. I want to slowly wrap it up. Thank you to anyone who joined. Thank you to anyone who commented. Thank you to anyone who caught me to comment on my own videos, so I can actually chat with you in the chat sometimes, so I don't have to verbally respond to every message. So thank you so much. As I said, I don't know my streaming plans for the next week, especially since I am going away on Thursday. But I really appreciate all your support. As always, subscribe to the channel, like the video, share it out with anybody who you think might enjoy it. Comment, don't just live, but comment also afterwards. And of course, you can become a channel member right here on YouTube or support you over on Patreon. You can leave me super chats and super stickers whenever you catch me live. And yeah, however you choose to interact with me, the community, these videos, it's all very much appreciated. As always, let me know what you would like to see me cover next. Until then, I wish you happy holidays, Merry Christmas, whatever else you might be celebrating. And if I don't see you until New Year's Eve, which is unlikely, I just wanted to wish you a nice transition into the year 2025, where we'll have plenty of new Apple leaks and rumors and new products to cover. And I'm really looking forward to that. This is Mark Tech tuning out. See you guys next time.